Hi everyone. So in this video I'd like to discuss what sort of laptop do you really need in order to be able to do data and business analytics. This could be because you're a student heading off to uni, or maybe you're starting out in a career in business analytics. It doesn't really matter, the principles are still the same. Now there are a lot of videos on YouTube recommending laptops, but most of these videos tend to focus on performance around video editing or gaming. And whilst there is some sort of overlap, basically the requirements for analytics are different. So the idea in this video is that I've designed a couple of tests which should basically test the capability of those laptops around analytics specifically, and so hopefully give you a bit more insight as to what is important when you do choose a laptop. Now you may think that in order to do analytics you need the latest and greatest hardware, but the good news is that this really isn't the case. So most reasonable laptops nowadays are probably going to be okay for the vast majority of analytics stuff that you're going to be doing. And this is because most reasonable laptops nowadays are more than powerful enough for pretty much any task that you could think of doing. So really that is the good news, because whatever laptop you choose, as long as it's reasonable, you're probably going to be okay. But of course there are some practical limits. Your dad's 20-year-old hand-me-down laptop probably isn't going to be okay now. So the question really is, where do we draw that line between performance and cost? Because whilst, yes, okay, we can buy any laptop and it's probably going to do a job, but we're going to be spending a long time on that laptop doing analytics. So we want something which is reasonably snappy, such that we don't want to throw it through the window. But by no means do we have to spend inordinate amounts of money in order to get a laptop that is comfortable and a pleasure to use. So hopefully this is where my tests are going to come in. So my first test would be around sort of testing the capability of a laptop to just simply crunch through a lot of numbers. And the best way I can think of to do this is to use a fairly typical machine learning task. Indeed, actually the one I'm going to use is the task that I give my students when we do the introductory machine learning computing lab. Now machine learning is a great example for this task because basically it just identifies a predictive model via brute force trial and error. So it's going to run through thousands of different permutations of parameters for a model, and that's just going to involve a lot of calculations. So the great thing about this task is that, in the real world, what we want to do is be tweaking and debugging the code, which our machine learning is based on, rather than waiting for the machine to chew through all those calculations. So the thing which we're looking for in this task is how quickly can we run this machine learning code, and obviously the faster the better, because that means we're going to be spending more time tweaking and debugging than waiting for the machine to finish. I get my students to do this task in R, which is a very good statistical package, which is very lean, very efficient. So don't expect any of the laptops that are going to run this task on to really struggle. But of course, it's that speediness that we're looking for. So the second test that I want to do is to see how the laptops handle a massive spreadsheet. And this is all too common a problem in business, as perhaps an inefficient analyst might be the one developing that big spreadsheet. But I think very often actually, if you're the analyst, you might well be called upon to rescue or fix a massive spreadsheet which somebody else has produced, and you have to come in and make it more efficient and work properly. The great thing about this task is that big spreadsheets will stretch the capabilities of pretty much any laptop. So it really is a good test for whether your laptop is going to be reliable enough and good enough to be able to handle pretty much anything you can throw at it from an analytics standpoint. So to do these tests, I've collected a ragtag bunch of laptops together that have been hanging around my house. First is my dear, lovely, precious MacBook Air, which is now 9 years old. I absolutely love this thing. I suspect I'm not allowed to say it's more dear to me than my wife or son, but it's certainly level pegging with the dog. Now, back in 2011, the specs on this were sort of okay. It wasn't too bad, but they are certainly pedestrian now. So the i7 processor in this would have long ago been taken over by i5 processors in more modern laptops. Second is my wife's Dell Inspiron laptop. Is one of these bendy ones. So I think it was about £800 when she bought it. Again, it's i7 processor inside it, 8 gigs of RAM. But I think you could probably pick up a similar type of laptop for about £100-200 less if you decided not to have the bendiness on it. And then finally, we have my work laptop, which is here, which is a Dell Latitude. It's pretty good actually. It's got another i7 processor in it. It's about 12 months old, but it's got 16 gigs of RAM, so it's got plenty of RAM inside it. So that's really nice. And then what I don't have on me at the moment is my mum's very entry level Lenovo IdeaPad, which is a very good, I think, example of an entry level laptop. And hopefully through that spectrum of laptops which I've got a nice range of laptops which show, what more capable machines are capable of and what the effect of having a less capable machine has. So yeah, let's get into the tests. So I ran the machine learning task on all 4 laptops, and as you would expect, the very entry level IdeaPad came in last, but it still managed to complete the task in about 40 seconds. Now this is slow and would be less than ideal if you were using it on a regular basis. You'd certainly be throwing it through the window before I think you get too far. But in a pinch, you could use this machine and get some results out of it, and that would probably be okay. To my surprise, my work laptop, which has arguably the best specs of all the laptops that I tested, came in third, but with a much better task speed of around 11 seconds to run the code, the machine learning code. In my opinion, this would be perfectly acceptable actually to work on and would not unduly slow you down. My wife's laptop, the Dell Inspiron, finished the test a bit quicker, in just under 9 seconds. But to my own surprise, actually my MacBook Air, which is now 9 years old, was the quickest, taking just under 7 seconds to complete this machine learning task. Now, why is my outclassed Air better at this task? I'm not sure I can actually give you an answer on that, but I think it's probably something to do with the better integration of software and hardware that you get on a Mac. But suffice to say, we can see that every laptop can run this task without a major problem. I expected this result, as are the software which we're running the machine learning code on. It's a very efficient and powerful piece of software, and at least 3 of my 4 laptops were or are very capable machines. So for a harder test, we must turn to a less efficient piece of software and thus enter our ubiquitous friend, Microsoft Excel. Now, the one thing that really does pose an existential threat to your computer and indeed your sanity are humongous spreadsheets. So I've tried to recreate one of these spreadsheets as best as I could and ended up with a monstrous beauty, I have to say, of 142 inefficient and memory hogging megabytes. So the objective of this test, as I say, is to see how the laptop's coped with standard things that we like to do on a spreadsheet. And in this case, we've got 3 sort of tasks, which is to first open it, second to copy one of the worksheets inside that spreadsheet and make a new worksheet, and then finally just to edit some of the individual cells within a worksheet to see how long it takes to recalculate all of the cells within the spreadsheet. So if we go to the results, looking at opening times, as I expected, my MacBook Air really started to struggle on this particular task, taking well over 7 minutes to open. But to be fair, this is not bad, as many laptops would probably just completely fall over and just not even open the spreadsheet. However, the newer laptops really performed much better. My wife's machine took 3 minutes to open the spreadsheet, and my work laptop took about 2 minutes. Suffice to say, the IdeaPad entry-level laptop didn't even, it couldn't cope, and it just crashed, and I couldn't open it up no matter how much I tried. So moving on to the copying of the worksheets, again my Air took the longest, but the newer laptops did okay, taking less than 10 seconds each, which I think would be okay-ish and wouldn't interrupt your workflow too much. Moving on to the third task, which is editing individual cells. Map of care took about 8 seconds, which I think would be on the boundary of usefulness if you're having to do lots of changes. But the two dells actually were both around an acceptable 2-second wait. I don't think this would unduly slow you down. So I think these laptops would probably be okay. I then did the final test, combining all of these operations together to replicate what I think would be a fairly common task in business of opening a spreadsheet, updating it to add some new data in, and then correct individual data points. The newer laptops with their extra cores and RAM perform much better. Indeed, actually much better than I expected. Laptops from 3 or 4 years ago, I just simply wouldn't have expected to open this spreadsheet. So I hope I've shown you that, if necessary, you can do an analytics degree with any reasonably capable laptop. But what are the minimum requirements that I say you could probably get away with? Well, for a student on a budget, I'd say the minimum you can get away with without literally wanting to throw your laptop through the window within a day or two of using it would probably be a Core i5 processor or an equivalent sort of AMD or another processor. 8 gigs of RAM I think would probably be reasonable, and certainly an SSD rather than a hard drive nowadays. But looking on PC World, these types of laptops start at around about £500, and I'd say that's probably a reasonable entry level for a laptop which you're wanting to do a lot of analytics on. Of course, if you can afford better specs, then I think by all means do so, as an extra bump in processing power and RAM will just make things that much smoother and quicker to use that machine. So my recommendation, if you can afford it, is for the best balance between performance and cost is probably an i7 or equivalent processor. 16 gigs of RAM would just allow you to have a very snappy laptop that can chew through most of the things that you could think to do on an analytics basis. Of course, in the end, it's not just the processing power or the RAM, it's the whole package. Indeed, when I'm not tethered to a desk and I'm grabbing a laptop to go out and work, I grab my MacBook Air rather than my work laptop because I just prefer the screen, the keyboard, the trackpad. I just feel like I can work easier and quicker on the Air than I can on my work laptop, even though my work laptop specs absolutely trounce the specs in my Mac. So of course your mileage will likely vary as we all value different things, but the point is to make sure that you are happy with the whole system and don't just focus on those specs. So you really do look at the keyboard, the screen, the trackpad, and just make sure that is a good fit for you. And that's probably going to be the best piece of advice I can give you. So I hope this video was useful. So those couple of tests shine some light on what is actually useful from an analytics point of view. And yeah, happy hunting for a laptop. And I think that's it for now. So cheers and thanks for watching.